when can we not read namaz? So there are three times when it will be makruh to read namazes. Number one is sunrise. Number two is sunset apart from the asr of that day. So, for example, you've not read your asr and the sun is about to set, and you start before the sun sets, and you continue your namaz whilst the sun is setting. The namaz will be valid, although it will be makruh tahrimi. I'll explain this in a while. So, sunrise, sunset apart from the asr of that day, and number three, istiwa. What is istiwa? Istiwa is when the sun is at its highest point, also known as zenith. And how do you calculate istiwa? Istiwa is between the midway point between sunrise and sunset. Now, some of you may have not heard the word istiwa, you may have heard the word zawal. The word zawal is commonly used. That technically is the incorrect word because zawal is actually when the sun begins to decline, and that is when Zohar time starts. For many people, when they're saying makruh time, they use the word zawal, which is when the sun is at its highest point. So istiwa is when the sun is at its highest point, and that is the midway point between the sunrise and sunset. So the example of today is sunrise today was at 6:06 and sunset will be at 8:19. So altogether that is 14 hours and 13 minutes. And the halfway point between 14 hours 13 minutes is 7 hours and 6.5 minutes. So if you were to add 7.5 hours to 6:06, that would leave us with 13:13, meaning 1:13. So 1:13 would be the istiwa time, the time where the sun is at its highest point, the time where it will be impermissible to read any salah, nafil salah or qaza salah. And the scholars say because it's hard to be precise on when the istiwa time is, they say you should give a precaution time of 3 to 5 minutes before this 13:13 and 3 to 5 minutes after. So essentially what we're saying is that it will be makruh to read any prayer 10 minutes before Zohar time starts. So we've got Zohar time 13:16 here, so you shouldn't read anything between 13:06 and 13:16. That will be classed as the makruh time, that will be labeled as the istiwa time. And like I say, some people call it zawal time, although zawal is actually when the sun begins to decline, and that is when Zohar starts. So these three times is when it is not permissible to read any prayers. Any prayers. Now, what about nafil prayers? There are certain rules when you can pray nafil prayers and when you can't read nafil prayers. So there are three times when you can't read nafil, meaning voluntary prayers. Number one is when the fajr time has started. So once fajr starts, you can't read, it will be makruh to read any nawafil after fajr has started. That's number one. Number two is to read any nafil after the faraz of fajr. So once you've read the faraz of fajr, even after that until sunrise, it'll be makruh. And the third time that it'll be makruh to read nafil is after reading the asr faraz. So once you've read, like we've just read now, we've read our asr salah. From now all the way until the sun sets, so until 8:20, it will be makruh to read any nafil. This is why in Ramzan, on the last day of Ramzan, we suggest and we recommend to people that before you read your faraz, read 2 rakat salatul istighfar. Because once you've read asr, even though there's a gap of a whole 1 hour between now and sunset, it will be makruh to read any nafil during these three times. So the three times are as soon as fajr time starts, even after you've read the faraz of fajr until sunrise, and number three, after asr until sunset. So for example, when you go Saudi as well, you do tawaf, it'll apply here as well to read those salahs during this time. Um, Apart from this, qaza prayers. So what is the ruling of qaza prayers? The ruling for reading qaza is slightly different to nafil prayers. So the three times I've just mentioned, they do not apply to qaza prayers, as you can see on the screen. So qaza prayers, they can be read after the fajr time has started. They can be read after the faraz of fajr as well. It's recommended about 5-10 minutes before sunrise you should stop, and you can also read them after reading the Asr Faraz as well. So the same rules as the Nafil do not apply to the Qaza prayers. You can read during those times where it's prohibited for Nafil, you can read Qaza in that time as well. Although, if you're reading your Qaza in the masjid, you shouldn't be reading your Qaza in the masjid after the faraz of Fajr or after the faraz of Asr. Why? Because essentially you're exposing yourself to the world. People will realize that this person is reading his qaza prayers. And when you're reading your qaza prayers, what does that mean? That means you missed the prayer in the first place. And missing the prayer in the first place was a guna, was a sin. So you're exposing yourself that you have committed a sin. So this is why the scholars write that you shouldn't read those qaza prayers in a congregation where people will see you. You should read them alone if you are going to read in these times. And from this we learn the importance of concealing when we do sins. In this day and age, where every sin we do, we're uploading it on Snapchat and Instagram. I've been to this cinema, I've done this sin. Essentially, that's what we're doing. We're exposing ourselves to the world. And here the scholars are saying in the matter of a ibadat, a worship, you shouldn't even expose the sins that you've done there. So these are the times where it's not permissible to read namaz. So there's a difference between the qaza times when you can read qaza and when you can read optional prayers. The ruling for janaza and sajda tilawat is the same as qaza prayers.